Hey everyone, divorce is never easy, and when there are overseas properties involved, things can get even more complicated. What happens to property and assets located overseas when a couple gets divorced in Singapore? Do the Singapore courts have power over assets in another country? And what are the legal and practical challenges involved? Today, we are diving deep into this issue, breaking down the law and giving a fresh perspective that may help those navigating this difficult situation. In any divorce, one of the biggest concerns is how assets are divided. Under Singapore law, the Women's Charter defines matrimonial assets broadly. These include any asset acquired during the marriage by either spouse, as well as assets acquired before the marriage but used by both parties or significantly improved during the marriage. However, gifts and inheritances that have not been substantially improved by the other spouse are generally excluded, except for the matrimonial home. The law does not distinguish between local and overseas assets. If an overseas property qualifies as a matrimonial asset, it will be included in the division. But this is where complications arise. Now let's talk about the real challenge: enforcement. Even though the Singapore courts can make an order that includes overseas property, enforcing that order in a foreign country is another matter entirely. Many courts around the world hesitate to enforce foreign divorce judgments, especially when it involves immovable property like houses and land. The general rule is that property is governed by the laws of the country where it is located. Therefore, if the foreign court refuses to recognize Singapore's divorce judgment, the order becomes difficult to enforce. What this means is that even if a Singapore court awards one of the spouses half of a property in London or Sydney, it may be practically impossible to make it happen without cooperation from the authorities in London or Sydney. So how do the Singapore courts deal with this problem? There are two main approaches. The first is ordering the sale of the overseas assets. The court may order that the foreign property be sold and the proceeds be divided. However, this depends on whether the party in control of the overseas asset complies. If they refuse, the other spouse may have to seek enforcement in that foreign jurisdiction. The second approach is adjusting local assets instead. Since enforcing overseas orders is difficult, the Singapore courts often prefer to include the foreign property's value into the overall matrimonial pool but award compensation through local assets. For example, instead of transferring part of a London apartment, the court may adjust the distribution of a Singapore condo or bank account to balance things out. This approach was used in a 2011 Singapore Court of Appeal case where a Gold Coast property was part of the matrimonial assets. But instead of transferring the property, the wife was awarded a corresponding share from other local assets. Now that we've broken down the law, let's take a step back and reflect. Divorce is often painful, not just legally, but emotionally. When fighting over assets, whether in Singapore or overseas, it's easy to get caught up in attachment. We cling to what we believe is ours, and sometimes this clinging blinds us as to what truly matters. The reality is that material wealth, no matter how vast, is impermanent. What seems crucial today may not hold the same weight years down the road. This doesn't mean we should not assert our legal rights. Of course we must. But at the same time, we should recognize that fighting over possessions can drain our energy, our peace, and even our ability to move forward in life. Sometimes, the best way to win is to let go. If you or someone you know is dealing with a divorce involving overseas assets, getting proper legal guidance is key. Every case is different, and experienced lawyers can help navigate these complex issues. Thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.